darkest night, yet thought I knew the way, the sin that promised joy in life had led.
Because of the vast proliferation of counterfeit drugs hitting the illegal market, the Federal Food and Drug Administration issued a warning on March 24th of this year, warning the public of the dangers of counterfeit drugs. Quote from their website, fda.gov, "Counterfeit medicine is fake medicine. It may be contaminated or contain the wrong or active ingredient. They could have the right active ingredient, but at the wrong dose. Counterfeit drugs are illegal and may be harmful to your health. The FDA takes all reports of suspicious counterfeits seriously, and in order to combat counterfeit medicines, is working with other agencies and the private sector to help protect the nation's drug supply from the threat of counterfeits. A deception more harmful than counterfeit drugs is a deception of the beast in Revelation 13, masquerading itself as Jesus Christ himself. The harm of the counterfeit Christ is not physical, but rather spiritual. The consequence is not temporal, but rather eternal. Hell and heaven are at stake." Our passage this morning deals with the power and the purpose of the beast, which we must remember from last week is Satan's desperate attempt in futility to harm the saints, knowing in advance that the outcome of his defeat has already been decided through the death and the resurrection of Jesus. So the title for this morning's sermon is "The Power and the Purpose of the Beast," which, we must remember, is his desperate response in futility in light of his already decided defeat at the hands of the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If you recall, Satan's response to his defeat is not to quit. Satan already lost when Jesus died on the cross, and when he rose from the dead, he fell down, he was staggered, he was dealt with a mortal blow, but he's still alive. So his response is not to quit, but to fight again. And Satan fights again, as we learned from Revelation 13, by raising up this mysterious beast from the hellish waters of the sea. And in order to harm the saints, Satan himself must empower the beast rather, with great power. And this power is to deceive people, and by deceiving the people, they will commit blasphemy, false worship, idolatry, and by committing blasphemy, God's judgment then will be placed upon the idolaters and the blasphemers. So that's the train of thought. The beast is allowed and is given power in order to deceive people. And by deceiving people, they would commit blasphemy. They would give worship and honor other than Jesus Christ himself. And by committing that blasphemy, God then is sealing their judgment. They're doomed, and they will spend the rest of their eternity in a lake of fire. No matter the strength of the beast's power, our passage reminds us that the beast's power is dependent and not autonomous. In other words, the beast is not as powerful as God, because God alone has autonomous, self-sufficient, independent power. So that whatever power the beast has, it is a creaturely power. It is a dependent power. It is not absolute power, because God alone has absolute independent power. So when we are confronted with the nature of the power of the beast, we must bear in mind that no matter how powerful this beast is, it is a creature dependent for his power ultimately upon God, as we see in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. "And I saw a beast which has 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems upon his horns." If you remember, this is not literal but figurative. The 10 here signifying multitude, a plurality, so that it is powerful. And horns indicate strength, power, might. So the bigger your horn is, the stronger you are. So this beast has 10 horns, meaning that he's very powerful. And he has 7 heads. The 7 here is not literal, but it's also symbolic, signifying completion of power. So he's totally strong. And 10 diadems upon his heads. He has 10 crowns upon his 10 horns, signifying kingship and dominion. All this to say, this is a powerful creature. Unprecedented power. Verse 2, and the dragon gave it. The dragon here is Satan, and it here is talking about the beast. The dragon gave it his power and his throne and his authority. That the dragon gives power to the beast indicates that the beast does not have self-sufficient power, but rather he is dependent and he is relying upon the power that it was given to him. The power comes from the dragon. That the dragon itself has power is only possible because Jesus himself gave authority to that dragon in order to harm the earth, which we saw already in Revelation chapter 9, verse 1. That the 5th angel sounded, I saw a star from heaven which has fallen to the earth. This is talking about Satan. And the key of the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit here is hell. And key here signifies authority and power. You have a power to open up hell. It was given to him, Satan. So here is a delegation of authority. Jesus gives power to the dragon, Satan, and the dragon gives it to the beast, which we learned is the Antichrist or the many Antichrists that is all around us. The point is, the power of the beast, yes, he's strong, is limited power. It is not up to the category of the power of God. God, by his very definition, is self-sufficient, only sovereign, singular, absolute in all creation. So that whatever power this beast may possess, such a power exists only because God gave it power, albeit limited and dependent power. Therefore, the upshot of this is that however rampant and pervasive evil may appear in our world, we cannot lose sight of a sovereign Jesus. We cannot lose our focus on King Jesus because he rules over evil and who in his sovereign wisdom has permitted evil to perpetuate in our time, to exist. And he does so for his glory. And we'll find out today this express purpose for raising up the beast after already destroying the beast. Why would he raise up the beast after he already defeated it? We shall see this morning God's purpose for that. If you remember, the saints in heaven, they never questioned the sovereignty of God. They never asked, why, Lord? But instead, the saints ask, how long, O Lord? In Revelation chapter 6, verse 10, Lord, holy and true, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood? The saints in heaven here are asking God, when will you put an end to evil? Not, why are you allowing evil to exist? Because they know God is sovereign and God has a purpose. So the question is not why. Why, Lord, did I get cancer? Why, Lord, did you allow me to lose my job? Why, Lord, did my mom die when I was 5 years old? Why? But rather, we trust in God's sovereign purpose for our lives. And so in our difficulties, the saints ask not why. Why are we suffering? We know why. God has a purpose. It's for his glory. But instead the question is when? When will this end, Lord? How long will you put up with this? And notably here, by giving the dragon authority, by giving the beast authority, the beast here is imitating Jesus. It's imitating Jesus. So Jesus gave the dragon authority, and the dragon thinks it's Jesus himself. So the dragon also gives authority to the beast. We see here in Revelation chapter 1, verse 18, I died, and I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys, the authority over death and hell. And Jesus gives this key to the dragon, and the dragon now gives it to the beast. So he is imitating Christ. It's a counterfeit Jesus. The imitation is not limited to the giving of authority, but also extends to the scope of the power of the beast. The beast, just like Jesus, will have worldwide dominion. Worldwide dominion. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 1. And I saw a beast which has 10 horns and 7 heads and 10 diadems upon his horns and blasphemous names upon his heads. Remember, all these things mean he's super powerful in a different category than everyone else. Going up from the sea. Now, the same use of horns in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 is found in Revelation chapter 5, verse 6. But wouldn't you know it, the horns is applied to Jesus. Verse 6 of chapter 5, and I saw before the throne the elders, a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, the same word there, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. The sending out into all the earth means Jesus has dominion over the earth. Because he has 7 horns. Completion of power. In Revelation chapter 13, verse 4, now talking about the beast or the Antichrist, the same attributes that are given to Jesus are also applied to the beast. In verse 4, and the whole world was marveled and followed after the beast. So the scope of the deception, the scope of the blasphemy, and the scope of the power of the beast is just like Jesus's. Worldwide. The whole world will fall to the counterfeit Jesus. This imposter. Jesus has 7 heads. The beast has 7 heads. 7 horns, 7 horns. He's pretending to be just like Jesus Christ. And this then would lead others, because they think he's as powerful as Jesus, to the absurd notion. The Bible calls it blasphemy. Sacrilegious. What is blasphemy in the Bible? Idolatry. That there's more than one God. That someone can compete with the power of God. That someone else deserves all our love and all our devotion and all our worship besides Jesus. If there's someone at all coming close to competing with Jesus in his kingship and his sovereignty and his demanding of worship from us, then such a notion, such a thought is blasphemous. It's blasphemous. There's only one king. Revelation chapter 17, verse 14. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is Lord of lords. He is King of kings. Revelation chapter 19, verse 16. On his robe and on his thigh, he has a name written, King of kings and Lord of lords. He's the only sovereign, only Lord of the heavens and the earth. Paul in Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, his letter to the church of Corinth, he states the reality of chapter 13 of Revelation, that the beast has dominion over the earth, but it is a limited dominion. It is an imitation of dominion of Jesus, and such a dominion is dependent and delegated dominion. And in chapter 4, verse 4, in their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers. Notice, who is Satan? He's the God of this world. To keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. That is to say, people who reject the gospel do so because of Satan himself. Satan prevents them from trusting and relying upon Jesus Christ. The God of this world is keeping a blinder over their eyes so that they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. Despite the beast's worldwide power, such a power is temporary because Christ will put an end to the beast's power when he returns. So the power of the beast, it is dependent, not autonomous. The power of the beast is worldwide. And finally, the power of the beast is temporary, because the beast has already been defeated at the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In Revelation chapter 12, verse 3, and I saw one of its heads, I'm sorry, this is chapter 13, verse 3. I saw one of its heads like having been slain from death, yet the wound of death was healed. And the beast, so this is the beast. He was dealt with a mortal blow. And after being dealt with a mortal blow, he comes back to life. What does that sound like? Death and resurrection. Another counterfeit. Looks like Jesus, acts like Jesus, has authority like Jesus, has power like Jesus. He dies and resurrects just like Jesus. So this is another imposter move, a cheap imitation. And we know this because Revelation chapter 5, verse 6 uses the same vocabulary that's applied to the beast, now applied to Jesus. In chapter 5, verse 6, and I saw before the throne and the elders a lamb standing as if slain. The word there is thanatos, the same word for death, the slain from death. You see that? Slain as if death. The same word. Revelation chapter 2, verse 8. Jesus, of course, does not remain dead, but he emerges from the dead alive, victorious on the third day. As we see in chapter 2, verse 8, the first and the last, who was dead, the same word there, and has come to life. I think that is equivalent to, he was healed. So the beast looks like Jesus. He dies and is also resurrected. Yet, unlike Christ, the resurrection of the beast is not for eternal life. The resurrection of the beast is not for kingship and dominion forever, but the resurrection of the beast is for eternal destruction. Revelation chapter 17, verse 8, the beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And go to destruction. So we see here in chapter 17, verse 8, another cheap imitation of Jesus. Jesus is the one who was, who is, and who is to come. The beast is who was, who is not, and will not come. Why? Because he will go into eternal destruction. So unlike the beast, Jesus really died. I think the beast here did not die. He was dealt with a blow, but he was still really alive. Jesus really died. The beast only appeared to die. Unlike the beast, Jesus resurrected to life and lives forevermore as king over the beast himself. And the beast will suffer eternal destruction in the lake of fire. So the way we think about this is try to think of World War II. There's the D-Day, which is on June 6, 1944. It's called the Day of Days. The history and the future of humanity depended upon that day when the Allied troops were dropped on the beach of Normandy, which is the front of Hitler and his regime. Hitler knows if they're able to breach this Normandy front, the war is over. He cannot stop them. So Hitler put all of his resources and his forces there on that day, knowing full well this is how they enter. Many will die. Many will die. June 6, 1944, D-Day happened. The Day of Days. The Allied troops breached the beaches of Normandy, and they were able to enter and send supply and send troops and send tanks necessary to fight a war. And Hitler knew once they breached, the war is over. It's a matter of time, because now they have endless supply of resources coming in every day. But that did not stop the war yet. That was only D-Day. The V-Day, which is called the Victory Day, was on May 8th, 1945. That's when the war finally ended. And that is the way we think of the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. When Jesus died and resurrected, that was D-Day for Satan. He lost. He knows it. So he was dealt with his mortal wound. But it's not V-Day yet, so he's still alive. He has a second breath. But knowing full well that his defeat has already been decided in advance because of the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, he's looking towards his eternal destruction date, which is the V-Day, when Jesus returns. This means then that the power of Satan, yes, it is strong. Yes, it is worldwide. Yes, when we look all around us, evil is pervasive. We must keep in mind that such a power is temporal. It's only temporary because the V-Day is yet to come through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Through when Jesus Christ returns, rather. Still, the book of Revelation leaves us puzzled and a bit perplexed. For what purpose would Jesus allow Satan to continue to live after already striking him with a mortal blow? Why? Why not just end the world when you defeated him already with your death and resurrection? Revelation 13 provides an answer. It may not be the answer that we are looking for, but it is the answer, nevertheless, that Revelation 13 provides. That is to say, the purpose for permitting the beast to live and rule temporarily is to deceive the unbelievers. And once they are deceived, as we've talked about, they will blaspheme. They will worship the beast. And by their blasphemy, their judgment is sealed. So the means by which Satan will incite this blasphemy is by deception, by offering a phony version of Jesus, which we have been talking about. So here, I've made a chart so we can compare the similarities and dissimilarity between the beast and Jesus. The beast has sword and horns. Jesus has a sword in Revelation 19 verse 5 in order to destroy, to strike down the beast. So both have sword and horns. But the difference is Jesus' sword is to kill the beast. The beast gives authority. Jesus is the source and the giver of all authority. When I was taking a problem of evil course, my professor always insisted that there's only one absolute in this world. There can only be one absolute. God alone is absolute. Free will is not absolute. Free will does not make God contingent. Free will does not make God reactionary. Because if free will becomes absolute, then we have dualism. There's only one God. He reigns. Satan is not co-absolute with God. So whatever power Satan has, it's delegated, comes from God. The beast has followers with the names of their heads. They're called the earth dwellers. They're the idolaters because they take their security on earth, in creation, in their jobs, in their education, in their relationships, in their status in life, anything that is earthly. So their names on their foreheads written, the mark of the beast. Jesus will also have the names of his people on their heads. But these are the believers, the saints, those who will overcome. Their names are already written in the book of life. The beast, he has a counterfeit death and resurrection, but it's only to destruction. Jesus, he has death and resurrection to eternal kingship and reign. As we shall see next week, the beast has authority over every tribe and tongue. Jesus also will have the final authority over every tribe and tongue. The beast is called who was and who is not. Jesus is he who was, who is, and who is to come. My dad told me a story of going to the Philippines about 5 years ago with this American missionary friend. And when they got there, they went to the mall, and someone offered to sell him a Rolex for $100 US. Wow, this is the mall. He examined it, seemed legit, make sure it worked, seemed fine. So, too good of a deal. There's like $5,000 in America, $7,000. I don't know how much a Rolex costs. This is a deal. So he bought it. As soon as he arrived in America, within a week, the Rolex stopped working. It was a Folex. It's a fake. It looked like a Rolex, the branding of a Rolex, but it was not a Rolex. Now, if you have a Folex with you, that's fine. I'm not condemning you. You're not a worshiper of the beast. But the idea is you have someone that acts, behaves, and looks like Jesus, so that people will begin to say, who is powerful enough to stop this beast? Blasphemy. Blasphemy. For this reason, the earth dwellers will fall for the phony Christ, so that they will blaspheme the real and the only Jesus Christ. In chapter 12, verse 4. And they worship the dragon because he gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast by saying, who is like the beast? Who is powerful enough to wage war against it? Now, what are the earth dwellers here doing? What are the idolaters here doing? They're committing blasphemy. And what is that blasphemy? They're attributing to the beast, to the Antichrist, to Satan, worship that is reserved only to God. The same phrase here is found in Exodus chapter 15, verse 11, Revelation chapter 14, verse 9. If anyone worships the beast, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire, sulfur, in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. If anyone falls prey to this blasphemous worship, you will spend eternity in hell. Revelation chapter 14, verse 9. That's what it means. And if you look back at our passage, the beast has power. And what is the purpose of that power? To deceive. What is the purpose of deceiving? To commit blasphemy. And what is the end result when we blaspheme against God? Judgment. Judgment. So there's a clear, logical deduction taking place with each action of the beast. Power to deceive, blasphemy, judgment. Paul says a similar thing in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11. Therefore, God sends them a strong delusion. Who sends a strong delusion? God. Why? Because there's only one absolute. Who is like our God? There's no one like God. So God sends a strong lie. What is the purpose? So that they may believe what is false. So God sends a deception, a powerful deception. So power in order to deceive, and deceive to commit blasphemy, so they believe what is false. And what is the end result? In order that, the result that all may be condemned who did not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. That is the purpose for Jesus allowing Satan to live after defeating him with his death and resurrection. It is to deceive in order to seal their judgment. It may not be the answer you're looking for, but it is the answer the passage gives. Now we can conclude with the following challenge. Satan and the beast will deceive by offering a phony alternative, a counterfeit Jesus, an imposter. He will die and be resurrected just like Jesus. He will have authority to give just like Jesus. He has 7 horns and 7 heads just like Jesus. He has a sword just like Jesus. He is who was and who is not. But Jesus is the one who is and who is to come. He looks just like Jesus. What is the point of all that? What is the point of all the deception? It's so that you will commit blasphemy. Idolatry. What is idolatry? To find your joy, your comfort, your security, or satisfaction outside of God, outside of Jesus. For you to be so deluded that you are convinced that you can have joy outside of obeying Jesus Christ. That if I commit this sin, I'll be happier. If I cheat here and get good grades, that will make me happy, not obedience to Jesus. That is the deception. It's not a particular person necessarily, but it's someone or something that we find our joy, our comfort, our security or satisfaction outside of Jesus. Do not be deceived. Jesus alone is our joy, our comfort, our security, our satisfaction, because Jesus alone reigns as King through his death and his resurrection. The beast does not have to be Satan incarnate. As we learned last week, it could be anyone or anything. Perhaps your life revolves around your relationships, boyfriend or girlfriend. Perhaps your security in life, everything you're hoping for is marriage. That could be a false sense of security. Perhaps your self-worth and your self-estimation, your values decided by your career or your education, your job. Perhaps you gain your importance, you gain your comfort, you find your security in your monthly paychecks. Perhaps it is our own warped and diluted sense of morality. I am good. I decide what's right and wrong. I determine for myself what is good, what is evil. I worship God the way I want to. I can go to church when I want to. I do not have to submit to the authority of Scripture because I am autonomous. I determine. Perhaps others are so caught up with social media, the amount of likes they get, that it consumes them. That is their security. Looks like Jesus, behaves like Jesus. It looks like it can give us joy just like Jesus can. But if we are not alert, if we are not mindful, then we will fall for the counterfeit and buy into this imposter who promises to give us comfort, joy, security. But it's not in Jesus. It's in things. It's in relationships. Do not be deceived. There's only one absolute, one Lord, one King, one God who sent His Son to live the life of obedience we could not live. Out of His great love for us, He died the death that we deserved, and He raised Him from the dead, so that by faith in Him, though we are dead because of our sins, He makes us alive by faith through grace. And now we have joy, comfort, satisfaction, found in Jesus alone. And we can say, who is like Jesus? Who is like our God? Who is more important than Jesus? Who satisfies more than Jesus? Who gives comfort more than Jesus? Unbelievers will say, yeah, a lot actually. Money, careers, education. But we say no one. No one. He is Lord. He is King above all. Let's bow our heads in prayer.